Okay, all right. So Introduction to Linux Engineering Program presented by Benjamin Addy. Okay, so Introduction to the Linux Operating System. Okay, so the hardware. All right, so Linux is an operating system. It was first developed in the 1960s. It is an old operating system. When you get into the field, you run into some folks that have been doing this for about 25, 30 years. So this it's a very old operating system, but the reason why so many companies are moving towards Linux is because it's built on a more secure platform. Other operating systems, such as like Windows, you have to install a lot of components in order for it to be secure. So it's been under constant development ever since. So by operating system, we mean the suite of programs which make the computer work. It is stable, multi-user, multitasking system for servers, desktops, and laptops. So Linux is not only installed on servers at your work field. You can actually use it on your regular laptop or desktop. Some people know that Linux is just a complete black screen, but there is also a GUI interface for 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 your desktop or even your laptop. A Mac computer is built on a Linux platform. Okay, so the kernel. We're going to go into all of this in so much more detail, but this is just a brief overview on the kernel. So the kernel of Linux is the hub of the operating system, is basically the heart of the operating system. We're going to go into that in much more detail. So the kernel, without the kernel, your Linux system will not be able to boot. You will not be able to turn on your system without your kernel. And we will go into much more detail on the kernel. It allocates time, memory, programs that handle the file store and communication in response to system calls. The shell. So is basically the shell is basically your own profile. So once your system has completely been built, once you build your system up from scratch, your virtual machine from scratch, and you log in with your username and password, it logs you in immediately into your shell, which is your profile. There's so many, different types of shells that you can log into. You have a bash, you have a corn shell, you have so many different types of shells, and we're going to go into all of that in so much more detail. So the shell acts as an interface between the user and the kernel. When a user logs in, the login program checks the username and the password, and then it starts another program called the shell. The shell is a command line interpreter. It interprets the commands the user types in and arranges for them to be carried out. The commands are themselves programs. When they terminate, the shell gives the user another prompt. So so like I was saying, once you log into your system, and we're going to go over all of that in so much more detail. This is just a brief overview. Once you log into the system, it logs you into your shell. All right. So can you all see this here?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, you're seeing my VMware workstation.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So this VMware workstation, which you all should have downloaded, is what you're going to access each and every time. This is where you're going to be doing your studying, your practice. When I say practice, 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 this is where you're coming to. So VMware workstation is is similar to what is being used in the work field. In the work field, they're using VMware ESXi 6.5, which the interface is similar to this. So this is basically like uh, this is what you're seeing here is similar to what you're going to see in the work field. I'll show you how it actually looks in the work field. But this is where you're going to be building your virtual machines. So, all right, and I provided each one of you should have also downloaded the documentation. So there was Red Hat 6 and Red Hat 7 documentation. So this class is going to cover both Red Hat 6 and Red Hat 7. So Linux has so many different flavors. There's so many different flavors of Linux. You know, Mac is built on Linux, but there's so many different flavors. Flavors as in different types. So you have Red Hat, which is a type of Linux operating system. You have CentOS, CentOS, which is also another type of Linux operating system. You have Ubuntu, you have AIX, you have IBM. There's so many different flavors of Linux. But Red Hat 7 and Red Hat 6 are the common ones that are being used, as well as CentOS. Most command lines are similar. There's a lot of differences, but Red Hat 7 and Red Hat 6 is what we are going to be focusing on. Most companies have already converted their systems to Red Hat 7. Some companies are still using Red Hat 6. So we're going to cover both of them. So I'm going to show you how to build a Red Hat 7 system as well as a Red Hat 6 system. I provided you all documentation for both Red Hat 7 and Red Hat 6. So let's go ahead and get started. So if you all have downloaded your ISOs, which I'm going to explain to you what an ISO is in just a minute, you're basically all set to watch. First you'll watch me, and I'll have you all try it on your own. And if anyone has any questions or runs into any issues, I'll have you share your screen. But I can't have everyone share their screen. But what I'm doing now is I'm recording this session. All of the sessions are going to be recorded. They'll each be uploaded to the website. So I'll give you access to be able to view the recording. So if if you want to review this session, you just let me know and I'll unlock the video for you to record. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the first thing you want to do when building your virtual machine, your VM, you go to File, New Virtual Machine, New Virtual Machine. And I'm basically going step by step in what is in the documentation. So we're going to then select typical. What we're doing right now is we're basically building a computer. That's what we're doing, a virtual machine. We're building a virtual machine, which is basically a computer. So typical and installer disk image. This installer disk image is what you're going to need to select, and you'll hit browse. Once you hit browse, you need to locate where the ISO that you downloaded is located. You need to locate that ISO that you downloaded. If it was either the RHEL 7 or RHEL 6, we're going to first start by installing the RHEL 6. So locate your RHEL 6. I have it right here, RHEL server 6.9. So an ISO is basically a CD. It is basically a disk. So what we're doing is we've selected our disk, and now you'll see it, once you browse and you select, it'll point you basically to where that disk is located. So now we will hit next. These fields here are not mandatory, but you have to fill them in. You can just put your first and your last name here. Put in your username. I'll just put Addy, and your password. So any password. I simply just use ABC123, and I'll confirm it, ABC123. Then I'll hit next. Now we want to give our VM, our virtual machine, a name. So I'm going to call this Lab 1. You can call it any name that you want. You can call it virtual machine. I'm just going to call this lab 1. This is going to be the name of my virtual machine. Okay, so this section here is the size of the initial size of the hardware, the hard drive that you're giving your virtual machine. So depending on the amount of space that is on your laptop, this is actually utilizing the space that's on your laptop. So I know I have a good amount of space on my laptop. So I'll suggest that you use if you're able to use 20 gigs of space, go ahead and use 20. Let's say a minimum of about 15 gigs that you'll need to use. So a minimum of 15 gigs. So I'll select the 20 and I'll keep here as default. And I'll hit next. And you do not want to power this virtual machine on yet. Don't power it on yet. Don't hit this check. So select finish. All right. So now the first thing that you need to do before we turn our system on, you see there are 2 CDs here. If you click into the first one, it's actually going to bring this screen up here. You have 2 CDs here. One of them is your actual ISO, and the other one is a default CD that comes with the VMware workstation that will automate the installation of your system, but that's not what we want. So you want to select this first one. This is going to be done every time you build a virtual machine. So you want to select this first one, but this is only for VMware workstation purposes. So you want to select this using file autoinst.iso and select remove. So we're just going to remove just that first one, nothing else. Okay. All right, so what are we looking at here? So what we're doing is we're basically building a computer. This is a virtual machine. So all of these components that you see here is everything that you need to be able to build a computer. So you have your memory, your processor, your hard disk, which we gave it 20 gigabytes. This is your CD, your network adapter, and the rest of these items are not necessary. So the only thing that you need to worry about are these first 5 items. So network adapter, we're going to want to select bridged connected directly to physical network. So I'll explain to you later once we've powered on our system. So that's going to be default. So that's what you're going to select each and every time you're building your virtual machine. So you'll first select that first disk and remove it. And network adapter, you'll make sure it's bridged connected. All right, so, okay. All right, so now we have all of the components that we need. We have our memory, our processor, our hard disk, this CD that we have, and the network adapter. So what we've done is, we've taken all of those components, we've taken our CD, we've opened our CD-ROM compartment, placed the CD in there, and we basically closed it. So now what is remaining is to actually power on the virtual machine. So now let's select OK, and let's power on this virtual machine. All right. So this is the default screen that you're going to see each and every time you power your system on. So now what we're doing is we're going to take the steps of just building a computer. If you unpack the Windows desktop that's coming to the mail, this is exact steps you're going to take. It's just like building a regular computer. So the first, you're going to select the first option, install or upgrade an existing system. So you can either wait for this countdown to complete automatically boot in 26 seconds, or you can just hit enter, which I'm going to do. So enter. And if anyone has any questions, please let me know. All right, so our system is, let's give it a second. All right, so right here it says to begin testing the media before installation, press OK, or choose skip to skip the media test and start the installation. So we're going to choose skip. So we don't need to test our media. Our media is the CD-ROM. So what it wants to do is it wants to run a test on that CD to make sure that it's not corrupted. So we don't need to do that. So we're just going to go ahead and select skip. So you can use your arrow key. You're not going to be able to use your mouse. You have to use your arrow key on your keyboard. So if you're trying to use your mouse, it's not going to work. You have to use your arrow key to right and left. So we're going to go ahead and select skip. And let's give it a second. So it says found local installation media, which is the CD. So it's found the CD, and what it's doing is basically preparing the next steps. All right, so now at this point, you can start using your mouse. So now you just need to, you can follow the documentation. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, I'll go ahead and select next. All right, so now we want to choose the language. So we're just building a computer. So we haven't even gotten to the Linux portion yet. What we're doing right now is we're just building a computer. So we select English, select next, next again. All right, so now we're going to select basic storage device. Keep that as default. Select next. All right, so this section here, you would select yes, discard any data. All right, so the host name. So the host name, for now, you can give your system a host name if you want, but I'll explain to you what a host name is once our system boots up to the login screen. But you can give your system a host name if you want. So I'll call this lab 1. It doesn't have to be the same as your virtual machine. You can call it anything that you want. So I'll call this lab1.home.local. You can call your host name whatever you want. The host name, I'll explain to you what a host name is, and we'll go into basically more detail once we get to the networking topic. So once you give your host name, you want to select configure network. All right. So now we would select system ETH0, which is basically our network. This is where you configure your network. This is where you make all the changes to your network. So you select system ETH0, and then you select edit. So from this screen here, you would go to IPv4 settings. This is where you configure your network. You don't go anywhere else, just straight to IPv4 settings. And you select the drop down and you select manual. So we want to manually input our network configuration. All right, so we need to give our system an IP address, a net mask, and a gateway. I'm not going to explain what those are. We will have a network topic where I will explain that in much more detail. But in order to determine what your IP address is going to be, we're all connected to Wi-Fi. So our system is basically going to need to connect or receive an IP address from your router that's actually in your house. So in order to figure out what IP address is free that you can use, what you can do is you can click on the start menu on your desktop and type CMD, which will bring up the command prompt. That will bring up the command prompt. Can you all see my command prompt here?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. So what you're going to do is you're going to type IP config space dash A, right? And then you hit enter. So now what we're going to, oh, sorry, no, that's IP config. Oh, spelled that wrong. IP config. Okay, just IP config. You don't need to add the dash A flag. So what we're going to look for is this right here, wireless LAN adapter. I believe that is what we're looking for. Yes. So some of you might see some different different things. What you want to look for is your wireless LAN adapter, basically. So at home I use Fios, so this is my router, and this is actually the IP address on my computer right now. This is the IP address on my computer. So look for wireless LAN adapter for Wi-Fi. You'll locate the IP address, the subnet, which is your net mask, and the gateway. And I'm going to explain what all of those are in the future. But for now, you're going to take this IP address, but it's 192, mine is 192.168.1.203. I'm not going to use .203 because it is already being used by my laptop. So I'm going to change it to .204. So what you'll do is you'll click into this space here and select add, and then you'll change that IP address to 192.168.1.204. I'm not going to select 203, so I changed it to 204. And your net mask is 255.255.255.0, and that was what was stated here as my subnet mask, 255.255.255.0. And the next item that I'm going to add is my gateway. So this gateway stays as default. So whatever your gateway is what you're going to input there. So the gateway is 192.168.1.1. So I'm going to change this gateway here to 192.168.1.1. So that is my gateway. And for DNS server, which I'm going to explain when we have our network discussion, is your DNS server is going to be 8.8.8.8. And once you have all of that inputted, at the top here, you're going to select connect automatically. You need to make sure you select that. That is key. Connect automatically. Now, does anyone have any questions here? All right. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and select apply and close. So it's saved all of that. And I'm going to go ahead and select next. And this is the time zone. So we're in Eastern, so I'll keep it at the American New York. That's the time zone. And select next again. And the root password. So this root password is what you're going to use to log into your system initially. So keep it simple, don't make it complicated. I'm just going to have this ABC123, ABC123. So I'm going to select next. It's going to tell me that my password is too weak and then that I should change it, but I'm going to keep it that way. So I'm going to select use anyway. So now we've gotten to this portion here. So the next item that we're going to select here is create custom layout. So this is where we basically partition our hard drive, and I'm going to explain to you all of that in much more detail. So create custom layout. So I'm going to go ahead and select next. All right. So when it comes to partitioning your hard drive, I'm going to explain that to you. Can you all see this here?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yep.
Okay. So the size of our hard disk was what? 20 gigabytes, right? That was the size of our hard disk, 20 gigabytes. So let's pretend that this square here is our hard disk. This entire square is our hard disk. So this has 20 gigabytes of space. So when it comes to partitioning your hard drive in Linux, there are three main components that you're going to need when partitioning your hard drive. So when it comes to partitioning, it means that you're basically going to divide your hard disk into multiple components, multiple spaces, in order for your system to actually be able to boot up. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to divide our hard disk, which is what they call partitioning. So this entire square, or our hard drive, our hard disk is 20 gigs. So the first partition, so we're going to take this chunk out, which is a partition, is our root partition, right? Our root partition. So this is a slash. This / is called root, R-O-O-T, root. That / is called root. So let's pretend that this entire space here we just took out is a whole 10 gigabytes in size. So this entire chunk that we just took out is 10 gigabytes. Actually put that in the middle, but yes, 10 gigabytes in size. So that's the first partition that you need to make on your hard drive is root. The second partition is your boot partition. So in order for your system to actually boot up, it actually needs space. It actually needs some space from your hard disk in order for it to boot up. So this space is not much at all. It's maybe about 500 megabytes or even smaller. So about 500 MB, megabytes. So it's not even a gig. It's not even, oh, sorry, megabyte, that's a B. So it's not even a gig. So your boot partition only needs about 500 megabytes in order for it to boot up. The next major partition that you need is your swap partition. S-W-A-P, your swap partition. So your swap partition is basically your reserved memory on your system. So when we first built our system initially, we gave it do you remember how many gigs of memory we gave our system when we first built it? Does anyone recall?
20 gigs.
20 gigs.
Okay, so that was the hard disk. So the hard disk was 20 gigs, but the memory on the system was 2 gigs.
2 gigs.
So
yeah.
it was 2 gigs. So let's go back to VMware Workstation here, and let's go back into our settings. All right, so memory, 2 gigabytes. So that's the memory. The memory on your system, on this system, is 2 gigabytes, right? So that's 2 gigabytes. So the swap has to be double that amount. So swap space is double the amount of your memory, and that's an interview question. So an interview question, they can ask you, what is swap space? So swap space is extra space when your system runs out of memory. So when your system runs out of memory, it starts using extra memory, which is your swap space. So the swap space is for good practices is double the size of your memory. So an interview question can also be, how do you determine the size of your swap space? So you just tell them it's double the size of my memory. So my memory is 2 gigs, so double that will be 4. If my memory was 8 gigs, my swap space will be 16 gigs. So we're going to give our swap space 4 gigabytes. So 4 gigabytes. So now we've used, let's say, roughly about 15 gigs out of that 20, leaving us with about 5 gigabytes of space. And that 5 gigabytes of space can still be used once you boot your system up. It will actually be extra space that you can actually add to either your root or even your swap partition once your system boots up. So does anyone have any questions here?
My question is a little bit further back. So as you were basically getting to this point, I was also trying to get to the point to this spot as well, but I kind of fell behind back. So I don't know if there'll be a time in the class for that later on. We don't have to, stop now and do that.
Yeah, yeah. What was your question that you had?
So I had started the process of installing Red Hat Linux 6.
Okay.
I got all the way down to, let me see, where am I at? What type of devices will your installation involve? I clicked
Okay.
basic storage device. That's what was on there. And then I
Yep.
clicked next. It's just that when you were doing this part, I was on my screen, and so I kind of missed it. Uh,
Okay.
but then when I hit next, it says the storage device below may contain VMware data, VMware virtual S. We could not detect partitions or file systems on this device. This could be because the device is blank, unpartitioned, or not, or virtual. If not, so basically, I'm supposed to hit discard on this.
Yes, discard. Yes, discard
Okay,
any data.
and then it takes me to the local host name uh,
Yep.
point, which I just go ugo.class1, and I hit next. And you see, the thing for me is I also got lost where you were got to the, what's it called?
Well, you can share your screen. You
Oh,
know how to share your
okay.
screen?
Yeah, I definitely do. Give me one quick second.
Yeah. Let me stop sharing, and I'll have you share your screen.
Okay. Share your entire screen. Okay, cool. I believe I'm sharing my screen, and
Yep.
this
I
is
can see
where
your screen.
I'm at.
Yep. Yep. So that's
So
the
this
time zone. So go ahead and
is,
select next.
okay. Oops. Okay, here we go.
All right. So now
And
put in your
then
root password. Don't make it too complicated. Just keep it simple.
no problem.
Yeah. All right. So create custom layout.
Okay. See, this is, and hit next.
All right. So now we're at the same spot.
Okay,
So
but
let's leave it just like that.
I didn't do any of
Say it
that
again.
network stuff.
Oh, the network stuff. Okay. All right. So go back and go back again.
Back some
Go back again and go back. All right. So configure network
Configure.
there. All right. So select system ETH0 and hit edit. All right. And in the middle there, you'll see IPv4 settings and drop down to manual. Hit the drop down to manual and select
Okay.
add. Yeah. So now you'll need to pull up your command prompt
Okay.
and
Okay.
type in ipconfig. So once you type in ipconfig,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so pull up your command prompt, which is cmd. Just type ipconfig. Yep. All right. So wireless LAN adapter Wi-Fi. So you'll see towards the bottom, you see IPv address, subnet mask, gateway. So the first IP address you see 192.168.1.47. So you can try 192.168.1.50.
50.
And your 1.50, and your subnet mask will be what's there, and your gateway will be what's there as well.
Okay.
Yes.
Give me
And you can
one
go.
quick second. I'm writing them down just so I'm not switching back and forth screens. So I hit add here, right?
Yep. Select add.
And the address will be 192.168.1.50. Oops, 50. Then I go
Yep.
here, 255.255.255.0. Then I go here,
Yep.
192.168.1.1.
Yep.
And I
And
hit
then
apply.
DNS server,
Oh, okay.
8.8.8.8.8. So I'll
Right,
explain all of
8.8
that
in a different.
and at the top, you'll see connect automatically. That is key. You need to make sure you
Okay.
select connect automatically. Now you
I
can
assume if you
apply.
don't do that, you will have to do this step every time, huh?
Yeah, you have to
If you
do it a second time, but it's key to have it done.
okay.
And you can select close. Pull your select close. Pull your command prompt back up again.
Okay.
So that IP address that we chose, the
Mm-hmm.
192.168.1.50,
Mm-hmm.
we chose that because we believe that it's not being used anywhere else in your house. So in order to
Right.
determine if it's actually being used, you can actually try and ping it. So
Okay.
you can type ping, type ping,
Uh-huh.
and then space
Uh-huh.
the IP address 192.168.1.50.
168.1.50.
Yep, and then hit enter. All right, so you're not getting any response back. So that means that, okay, see, destination host unreachable. So that means that no one else in your house is using it, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
try to ping 192.168.1.47.
192.16.
Put the ping in the
Oops.
front,
Oops. Yeah. Yeah.
or you can hit the up arrow key.
Up arrow key. Okay.
Yeah,
168.1.47.
192.168.1.47. Yep, now hit enter. All right, so now we're getting a response back. So that means that IP address is actually active. So it's actually being
Okay.
used by your laptop.
My
So that's why we're
laptop.
getting a
Correct.
response back. Yeah.
I
So if you
see.
knew the IP address of your cell phone, if it's connected to Wi-Fi, it has an IP address now. So if you ping that
Okay.
IP address, you'll get a response back. So in order
I
to know
see.
if an IP address is free, it has to be unreachable. So if you can't reach it, that means nobody's using it.
I see.
Okay.
IP.
All right. So now let's go back to VMware Workstation, and you can select next all the way to where we were at.
Okay. Los Angeles. My password. Here.
And
Exam
create
storage
custom layout.
devices.
All right. So that's where we're at.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So now let me share back out.
Okay. I should hit stop sharing screen at this point, right?
Yeah, you can hit stop sharing. Yep.
Okay. Alrighty, cool. Thank you.
No problem. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay. All right. So you all can see my VMware workstation?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So just another quick review on this here, which is important. So partitioning your hard drive. The three main partitions that you need are your root, your boot, and your swap. So this slash that you see here is called root. Whenever you see a slash in the beginning, this is root. That is your root partition. And then you have your boot partition and your swap partition. All right. So now let's go ahead and get started on partitioning our hard disk. So we'll select this and you hit create. And first you'll select standard partition. Select standard partition and you hit create. So we'll hit this drop down here and you see you have root and you have boot. So the first one we're going to select is our root partition. That's slash for root. We'll leave this here as default and we'll change the size. So right now it's 200 megabytes. So what did we say we wanted? We wanted 10 gigs. So 1,000 megabytes is equal to 1 gig. So 10 gigs, that would be 10,000 megabytes. So 1,000 megabytes is equal to 1 gigabyte. So 10,000 megabytes, that's 10 gigabytes. So we have our root partition, our root mount, and the size is 10,000. So we'll select OK. So now we've given that 10,000. Now we have 10 gigs remaining. So now we'll select that again and we'll hit create, standard partition, and we'll hit create again. We'll come to this drop down and now we'll select the second one, which is our boot partition. And our boot partition, you can actually just leave it right here at 200 megabytes. That's all that's needed for it to be able to boot up. But I'll actually add about 500. So 500 megabytes that we're going to use. It can actually be smaller than that. I believe the standard size is about 253 megabytes. That's all that's needed for your boot partition. But I'll just add some more space just in case. All right, so we'll hit OK. And now we're remaining at 10 gigs, or about 9.9, about 9 gigs basically. Yeah, so we'll select our free space again and we'll hit create, standard partition. And once we hit this drop down, you're not going to see swap here. These are other partitions that you can also add, but the three main are root, boot, and swap. In order to select swap, you come to this file system type, you hit this drop down, and you select your swap partition. So remember, so what is swap space?
Swap
Anyone
space is a
can
double. Oh, fuck it.
Extra space when your system runs out of memory.
Extra space.
Yep. Yeah. So how do you determine your swap space?
The amount of your
The reserved memory, you double the amount of your memory.
Yep. Yeah. Double the amount of your memory. So our memory is 2 gigs. So we're going to give our swap space 4,000 megabytes, which is 4 gigs. And we select OK. So now we've partitioned our system with the 3 main partitions. You can add more partitions, but we're just going to keep it just like this. Those are our 3 standard partitions, our root, boot, and swap. Boots is larger because that's where everything is stored. Everything is stored on your root partition. And we have our boot partition, which is used for once your system boots up. And we have our swap partition, which is double the size of your RAM. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and select next. So now it's going to access the following pre-existing device has been selected to be formatted. So formatting means it's going to clear, in case there's anything on that 20 gigs that we added to the system, is going to clear anything that was on it, if anything was on it, and is going to begin partitioning it to what we decided, the root, boot, and swap. So once we select format, you'll see that, okay, now is going to access to write the changes to the disk. So the changes that we just made, we want to actually apply it to our hard disk. So now what it's going to do is it's going to partition your hard disk. So root, boot, and swap. So it does it fairly quickly. So that's all complete. So now we'll select next. We'll keep this as standard and select next. All right. So now we'll also keep this as standard basic server. So this is the type of installation that we want to apply to our operating system. So we're just going to keep this actually, let's scroll down and we'll select minimal. Wait, no, you know what? Let's select basic server, basic server. So let's select basic server. These are all of the, basically the packages that are going to be installed on your, the default packages that are going to be installed on your system. So we select basic server and we select next. All right. So now that is basically it. So now what it's doing, all of the changes that we've applied, it's applying them, and it's basically now installing the packages that we selected for the basic server from our ISO, from the disk, onto our system. So this is the installation process that you take for installing on for using Red Hat 6. So this is the process for installing your system using a Red Hat 6 ISO. So any questions?
Yeah, I have a quick question. So let's say they say, can you install Red Hat? This is how you do it.
Yeah, this is how you, yeah, basically this is the process of installing your Red Hat 6 ISO. Yeah, basically yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we haven't gotten, this is the easy part. So this is basically the easy part. We haven't gotten to the fun stuff yet. So yeah, so this is the process for installing Red Hat 6. Red Hat 6. So any other questions? All right. Okay, so that took about an hour. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to start the installation process of installing a Red Hat 7. So this is Red Hat 6. So now we're going to go through the process of installing on a Red Hat 6. And once we get completed with that, we'll take about a 15-minute break. So, all right, so no questions here. So let's hop over to Red Hat 7, which is a lot more quicker. All right, so you go back to File, New Virtual Machine. You keep that as typical. Next. All right, so right now we have our Red Hat 6 CD inserted. So now we're going to go to Browse and select Red Hat 7. So Red Hat 7 is what we're going to install. So Red Hat 7. So you select Open. So now it's attached it. and you select next. Fill in your information here. This is not mandatory, doesn't matter what you put here. This is just for VMware Workstation purposes. ABC123, ABC123. And you select next. All right, so now let's give our virtual machine a name. So I'm going to call this one Lab 2. You can call it whatever you want. I'm going to call this one Lab 2. Select next. So maximum this size. So this size, I'm going to give this one another 20 gigs. If you don't have much space on your system, you can give it about 15 gigs. You can even give it 10 gigs if you wanted. But when you partition your system, your root will need to be about 5 gigabytes in size. So your root, boot, and swap will need to be about, your roots partition will need to be about 5 gigs. So I'm going to give this another 20 gigs. So this is actually using the storage on your laptop. It's using the storage space on your laptop. So I'm going to go ahead and select next. Do not select this. Like I stated before, we want to make some changes first before we power it on. So select finish. All right, so we have our memory, our processor, and we're going to select this first disk, like I stated before, and we're going to remove it. So let's remove that because it's not needed. And we'll go to network adapter and select bridged connected directly to a physical network. So we're selecting that because we actually want to connect to our router in order to be able to receive an IP address. That's why we're selecting that. All right. So, all right. Okay, so your memory. So memory is basically how quick your let's say you open an application on your system, or you are installing an application on your system. The amount of memory that is on your system will also determine the speed in which it will take that application to finish downloading. That's your memory, the speed in which it takes an item to complete, like downloading. Memory is also used when you're transferring data from one place to another, the speed in which it will take to transfer data from one place to another. Your processor. So your processor is basically what is used to think. So let's say you click on an application on your computer, right? And it takes forever to open. That means it's utilizing a lot of its processor, the processor on your system. So if your processor is low, it's going to take some time for that application to open because it's trying to think. Let's say you have a whole bunch of applications running on your system at once. It's going to use a lot of the processing speed. It's thinking a lot. That's what processor is for. Processor is basically the brain, and your memory is basically how fast it's going to move, how quickly you're going to think, and memory is how quickly is it going to move from one place to another. All right. So we have our RHEL 7 ISO inserted, and now we'll select OK, and we will select power on this virtual machine. So now this process is basically building a RHEL 7 virtual machine. So now we're at this GUI here. So install Red Hat Enterprise 7. So you can either wait for this countdown to complete, or you can just go ahead and select enter. So that was the same process we took in the 406, if you remember. So I'll go ahead and select enter. So now it's going to, okay, so it says press the enter key to begin the installation. Let's hit enter once again. So now what it's going to do, let's give it a second. What it's doing now is actually testing our disk. So now it goes right into testing it. It doesn't prompt us if we want to skip. But if you want to skip it, instead of waiting, just hit the escape key. We don't need to test it. So what it was doing just now is it was testing the disk to make sure it was not corrupted. It wasn't faulty or anything. So now what we've done is we've hit the escape key just to bypass that. All right. Okay, so the GUI is going to look different. This process is going to be fairly quicker than Rail 6. All right, so English is the language we're going to select, and we hit continue. All right, so all of your work is basically going to be done on this screen here. Let's just wait, give it a second for it to complete. All right, so we'll see the first option is your date and time, and it's already populated, so we don't even have to click into there. So the time zone is New York. The language is English. The installation media source is a local media, which is basically the ISO, the CD that we inserted, so we don't even need to make any changes there. The software selection is minimal install. So let's just keep that as default. We don't even need to make any changes. You can click into it and select basic server if you want, but I'm just going to keep it just like that. All right, so installation destination. So this is where we're going to partition our system. So everything is all on one screen. It's not going to, how Rail 6, how you had to go through different screens. It's all on one screen. So installation destination. So let's click into that, installation destination. So this is where we're going to partition our hard disk. So it's the same concept. We have our 20 gigs here. And what we're going to do is we're going to partition it into 3 major components: root, boot, and swap. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to select here. I will configure the partitioning, and then we select done. So now it's going to take us to the location here where we want to partition our system. So now let's hit this drop down here, and the same thing, we go to standard partition, and we hit add, this plus sign to add the partition, and we hit this drop down, so we select our root partition. So that's the root partition. So the root partition, I'm going to give this another 10,000 megabytes, which is 10 gigabytes. So then you select add mount. So now it's added the 10,000 megabytes for the root partition. So now we're going to add another standard partition, and that one is going to be our boot partition. So boot partition, you can give it 253 megabytes minimum, but I'm just going to give it, I'll just give it 400 megabytes. So that's 400 megabytes there. So now we add the mount point. And the last one is our swap partition. So it actually gives us the option on this drop down to select the swap. So the swap partition is double the size of your memory. So that's going to be 4,000 megabytes. So now let's add the mount point.
I have
so
a
now
question.
That's basically it. Yep, what is your question?
Does it matter the order you go in?
No, it does not matter.
Okay.
You can start with swap, you can start with boot, it doesn't matter.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. All right, so we have our boot, our roots, and our swap. So boot 400 megabytes, 10,000 megabytes for roots, and 4,000 megabytes for swap. So now let's select done. All right, so now it's telling us it's going to format, basically wipe the disk and partition it. So accept the changes. All right, so now it's doing all of that there in the background. So now the next one that we're going to select is the network and the host name. So now let's select network. All right, So now this is what we're going to select here. And we go into configure right here, configure. So now we're going to go to IPv4 settings. We're going to select the drop down to manual. We'll go to add. And if you recall, the IP address on my system, 192.168.1.203, I gave my other system 204, so I can't use that. So let's see if I can use 192.168.1.205. All right, so I'm not getting any response back, so that means that 205 is available. So now I'll use 192.168.1.205 and the net mask 255.255.255.0 and the gateway 192.168.1.1. That's the gateway. All right, and the DNS server, once again, 8.8.8.8. So this network portion, I'm going to explain in so much more detail once we start our network topic. All right, so now we don't have that option at the top to select connect automatically. So what we're going to do is you select save, and this is what we turn on. You hit that button here to turn it on, and it'll populate our IP address, 192.168.1.205, our subnets, our default route, which is our gateway, and our DNS, which is 8.8.8. So now all of that is complete. So now we go ahead and select done. All right. So we don't need to make any changes here in the KDump or in the security policy. So everything is basically complete. So now we can just begin the installation. So once you select begin installation, so now it's actually partitioning and installing the packages. Now at the top here, you can actually select the root password that is going to be created on your system. So ABC123, ABC123, and select done. Select done again. All right, so now it's asking me to create a user. So this is basically going to be the first user that is going to be created on the system. So I'll just say Ben space Addy. So that created the user for me, be Addy. I'm not going to check this, make this user the administrator, because this is just a regular user. So I'll create a password for this user, give it the same password, ABC123, ABC123. And I'll select done. It wants me to change the password because it's weak, but I'll just select done again and it'll bypass. So now it's installing all of the components from our ISO. So now this is basically installing a Red Hat 7 ISO. This is the process that you'll take to install a Red Hat 7 ISO. So we did Red Hat 6 and Red Hat 7. Red Hat 8 is actually out already, but there are no companies that are using Red Hat 8. And Red Hat 7 is going to be used for maybe about another 2 years until, or about another year or so, until companies start migrating to Red Hat 8. So now let's go back. Is there any questions? Yeah, that only took us about 20 minutes. So see, it's much quicker than Red Hat 6 installation. Any questions?
Are you gonna one?
Say it again. No questions?
No, I was just gonna ask because this whole time I've just been taking the notes. I've not been
Okay.
able to actually follow along and do it at the same time as you. So
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, this is being recorded, so I will upload this immediately after the class to the website, and I'll direct you to how to view it.
Sounds good. Thank you.
No problem. All right, so now let's go back to our Red Hat 6 installation and see where we're at. All right, so it says, congratulations, your Red Hat Linux installation is complete. So now let's go ahead and select reboot. So now it's going to reboot the system. And if we did everything correctly, it will take us to our login prompt for us to be able to log into our system. Okay, so for next class, I'm going to suggest that if you have a desktop or a laptop, I should have let you know in the beginning to get an extra monitor. So that on one screen you can have my session going, and on the other screen you will be able to actually practice whilst I am whilst you are watching. That's optional. No, that's optional, but I would definitely recommend that. All right. So now we are at our login screen. So you remember we gave the initial root password in order to be able to log into our system. I believe we gave it ABC123. So first you have to enter in the root user. So root is the administrator of the server. So when you're building your system, it asks you for that password. So we gave it the password, but the username does not change. So the username is ROOT, right? And you hit enter. And the password we gave it was ABC123, right? I'm going to type ABC123. You're not going to be able to see it, right? You're not going to see what you're typing when you're putting in a password, just for security reasons. So once I hit enter, now I'm logged in. So if I hit enter a couple of times, you'll see that I'm logged in. So I'm logged in as root at lab 1. All right, so now let's take a look at our Red Hat 7 installation. Let's see how that's going. All right, so that looks like it's complete. So it's giving me Red Hat installation Linux is now successfully installed and ready for you to use. So now let's go ahead and reboot. And if all of this was done correctly, it will take us to the login screen. All right, so there it goes. So took us to the login screen. You have a question, Hugo?
Yes, I do have a question. I noticed that each of these, we've basically allocated 40 gigabytes for our hard drive, right?
Yes.
One for Red Hat 6, one for Red Hat 7. So my question is, if let's say I see it saved on your screen under my computer. Let's say I delete those, just so that I can redo it for practicing purposes. That should be
Yep.
fine, right? I should get those 40 gigs back.
Yep, you do. Yeah. So if you actually power it off, you know what? I don't think you get your space back if you power it off. But if you delete it completely by right click, you go to manage. Once it's powered off, but you have to power it off first.
First to delete it.
But I'll show you how to power it off. Yeah, to be able to delete it completely. So you don't just go to where is it? Remove where is it? I thought there was like a delete option. But what you go to is you go to manage, and then delete
Mhm.
from disk. So once it's powered
Okay.
off, you select delete
Okay.
from disk, and then you'll get
I
that
see.
space back. But that's
I
actually
see.
what I recommend. So every time you build your virtual machine and you practice, when you're done, you delete it. So the next day you
Okay.
rebuild it. You rebuild
Okay.
it so that it'll just become, it's just all
Second
part of your
nature.
whole practice. Yeah, it's all practice.
No problem. Thank you.
All right. So now our Rails 7 system has gotten to a login prompt. So we're able to log in as root ABC123. All right. So now we're all logged in. All right. So any questions from anyone? I see someone else had just joined. Mike.
Yeah, sorry, I was having some audio issues.
No, no problem. No problem. Yeah, this is Mike. He's one of our students as well. You can go ahead and just, introduce yourself, something quick, just your name and why you're taking the class.
Yeah, so my name is Mike Scott, and I was interested in taking the class because I wanted to get interested into IT, information technology. So that's why I wanted to sign up.
All right.
I have a question.
Okay. Question. What's your question?
I see where it says the localhost login. You've used root
Yep.
twice. Was that what you used prior, or why
Okay.
root?
Okay. All right. So I'm going to type exit, right? EXIT. That's the exit out of your login. All right. Okay. So right now I'm at the login prompt. So just like when you power on your Windows machine, it asks you to put in your username and your password, right? So the username is root, and when I hit enter, then it tells me to put in the password. So the password is ABC123. So once I get logged in, now it tells me that, hey, now you're logged in. So now you're logged in as yourself. You're logged in as root at localhost. I didn't create a host name for the system, so that's why it's saying localhost.
Okay, so root will always be the one that I even will place or put.
So root is the administrator of the server. That's what you're going to use to log in.
Okay.
Unless you create another user on the system. And I believe when we built our Rails 7 system, it gave us the option to create another user. So let's actually see if that user is actually going to work. So I believe the user that I created was B Addy. And the password I gave that also was ABC123. All right. So now I'm logged in as B Addy. B Addy is just a regular user on the system. He does not have root privileges. He's not above root. He's a regular user. He's not an administrator. So I just logged in as myself, as 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 B Addy. So once
Okay.
you get into the work field, you as a Linux administrator, you might be working with maybe 3 or 4 or 5 other Linux administrators. Is you're the one that's going to administer the operating system. So you're the only one that's going to have the root password. So the root password is not just going to be ABC123. It's going to be much longer than that. It can be up to 15 characters, something extremely complicated. And you and the other admins are the only ones that are going to have that password. So other users that are not Linux admins, or that are maybe developers or network administrators or other job titles that log into the system, they're going to log in as themselves. So let's say S. Johnson, she'll log in as herself. She's not going to log in as root, because you're going to be the one that's going to be in charge of managing the system.
That makes
So
sense.
okay. So any other questions so far? All right. Okay, all right. So we're going to take a 15-minute break, and we'll be back at 8:45. At 8:45. So we'll take a 15-minute break, and we'll be back at 8:45. Okay, all right. So we just went through the process of installing a Red Hat 6 and a Red Hat 7. So the commands are fairly different, not too much of a difference. Uh, when it comes to, I'll show you the differences, but when it comes to like the firewall, which I'll explain to you, when it comes to starting and stopping services, which I'll explain to you as well, uh, and some few changes with the kernel, which I'll also explain to you as well. All right, so like I said before, so your kernel, well, one that we just discussed, you all can see my screen, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
so right now we are on our RHEL 7 system. So the kernel, I'm going to reboot my system. So to reboot your system, you can actually only do it as root. So currently I'm not root, I am baddy. I'm a regular user. So let me actually try to reboot. So when I try to reboot, oh, okay, I think I gave myself admin privileges, so it actually let me. All right, so right here, oops, let me do that again. Okay, right here, this right here is your kernel. When your system is initially booting up, you'll see this screen. So let's, yeah, you'll see this screen. This screen right here, this is your kernel. So the kernel is the heart of your computer. So you have to boot into your kernel first before you can get anywhere else. So we actually have two kernels on our system. We actually only have one actually. The second one is you don't need to worry about that, is a rescue kernel. But the first one, that's our kernel. You can have multiple kernels on your system, but this first one is our kernel. It is the heart of our system. That is what boots you into your operating system. So I'll explain that in much more detail. I'll explain the boot process of everything that occurs from start to finish. I'll explain all of that, but we discussed kernel earlier, and this is your kernel. So I'm going to hit enter to boot back into it. And once your system gets into the login prompt and you first log into your system, you're logging into your shell. So everyone, the default shell, once you log into your shell, is your bash shell. It's basically like a profile. It's basically a profile that allows you to execute commands in a certain way. It's a profile that allows you to execute commands in a certain way. So the default shell is bash. So once you build your system initially, the default standard shell is your bash shell. And I'll show you on one of these topics how to change your shell, or where your shell is located. But once I log into this system, root ABC123, right now I have logged into my bash shell. So this is the default shell. So right now I'm logged into my system. All right. So did anyone have any questions that they thought of regards to the initial installation of the RHEL 6 and RHEL 7? Okay. All right. So the first place that we're going to take a look at is the basic file system tree. So the basic file system tree. So in order to maneuver around your system, almost like using a mouse to click around on your Windows system, in order to be able to move around your system, you first use a command called cd. You begin your command with cd. cd allows you to be able to move from one place to another on your system. To move from one place to another, you use the command cd. So the first place that we're going to look at is our root file system. Is our root file system. So if you do cd slash, so that is the root partition actually that we created on our system. cd slash, just slash. Slash indicates the root location. Slash, the first slash indicates the root location. So if you do cd slash and you hit enter, right now it has placed me inside of the root location, the system root location. So right now I'm inside of slash, which is the main root location. So now we want to see what is inside of this root location. This is the standard root location. So we want to look at our file system tree. So if I do an ls, ls is to basically list out what is inside of this location, right? If I do ls, just ls, nothing else, just ls, that will list out what is inside of this root. So if I hit enter, it's telling me that I have directories, and I have, these are the different directories that are inside of root, which is slash. So that's ls. If I do ll, which is similar to ls, ll is basically a long list. ls just lists it out. If I do ll, it actually lists it long ways. So the same thing you're seeing at the top when I used ls to display what was inside of cd root, when I did ll, now I'm actually displaying it long ways. And when you display it from top to bottom, it actually provides you more detail of these directories. So these are all directories on your system, on root, right? So I'm going to clear out my screen. So in order to clear out your screen, you can either type clear to clear, that clears your screen, or if I wanted to clear my screen, I can just do Control L, but most people just use clear, C-L-E-A-R. That is just to clear your screen. So right now we are in our question, Ugo.
Yes, really quick question. I was trying to skip along. My question was, how do you log into your root user in Rel 7 again?
Is the same. So this the password that you gave your root user.
Mm-hmm.
So the user is root. So I'm going to exit out of this. So watch, I'm going to exit. To exit, to log out, you just type exit.
Exit. Okay.
Right? So I'm going to log back in. So
Okay.
ROOT for the root user, and I hit enter, and then you put in your password, ABC123. You're not going to see the password.
Yeah.
While you're typing it. So then when you see hit enter, then it logs you in.
I see.
Yeah. That's why I said don't give it a complicated password, because
yeah.
then so just keep it simple.
Okay.
All right. Mike?
Thank you.
So as far as the password, do we create one or it will give us one automatically?
Okay, so once we built our systems initially, there was a section where it prompted us to enter our password. So I think you might have missed that portion, but this particular session is being recorded, so you will be able to view the recording from the beginning to see exactly what we did.
Okay, no problem.
Yeah. All right. So I'm going to clear my screen. All right. So where did I go to? I went to roots, the system's root location. So that is cd slash the system's root location. And to list out what is in that particular location, you can either do an ls, which will list it out this way, or you can do an ll, which will list it out long ways. Long ways, that's what I prefer to do because it provides more detail. And we'll talk about all of these items that are on the left side here. But all that we're focusing on right now, this is the basic file system tree. So the basic file system tree, this is basically the beginning. This is basically the beginning of your. In order to get anywhere else on the system, you have to start from here. So to get to anywhere else on your system, you have to start from the system's root location. So in order to get to bin, you have to start from root. In order to get to boot, dev, etc, home, lib, lib64, media, mnt, opt, any of these, you have to start from here. So this is basically the beginning of the file system tree. So you start from here to get to anywhere else on your system. So let's a second. Okay. Okay. All right. So you're not going to get asked in an interview question, what is your basic file system tree? But it's good to know what each of these locations consist of. So you have your bin, boot, and so many different locations on your system. So the first one, like bin. So bin is basically like essential command binaries that need to be available on your system for all users. So just like the ls command that we used, or even the ll command that we used, all of that actually lives in here. So those commands that we're using to be able to execute, most of that lives inside of bin. And your boot. So boot is the contents that is inside of boot is basically what is being used for your system to be able to boot up. So without this directory here, your system won't boot up. And that is actually what we created initially. That was one of our partitions, which was boot. What else? Your dev here, these are essential device files. These include like terminal devices, such as like your USB or any devices attached to your system. I'm not going to go through all of these, but you can do some research on them to get more information. Even like etc. etc is host-specific system-wide configuration files. You have your home directory. Your home directory is where all of your users live. So when a new user is created on your system, this is where that user lives, basically. So when it's created, that user name is placed there. That is where that user is placed. So that's your basic file system tree. All right, so you have your media. Media is basically media. That's basically the CD-ROM. So if you wanted to actually mount that CD-ROM that we actually attached, at this point we're not using that anymore. The ISO at this point is not being used, but it can actually be used in the future for being able to install or configure certain parameters on your system. And this is actually where that ISO will be placed. That's the media. And you have your MNT, you have your opt. Your opt is basically application software packages. So that's opt. That's where your software packages live. So you have your proc, your root. This root here, ROOT, that is the user root. So that's one thing that you need to understand. You have slash, so let me clear this out. You have CD into slash. Slash is the system root, right? And you have ROOT, which is the user root. So we logged in as root. When we logged into the system just now, we logged in as the user root. But this location where we're currently at is the system's roots location. So keep that in mind. Sometimes you can get confused when you're trying to, like when you're trying to figure out where you're at or where you're trying to communicate with someone what you're trying to do on your system. You might get confused and think, oh, was he talking about the root user or the location root? So the first location where you start on your system is root. All right. Any questions? Okay. All right. So now let's get right into it. Let's try and get a little more complicated. So right now we're on our RHEL 7 system. So even if we go into our RHEL 6 system, which we're logged into, if I cd into slash, which is also root, and I do an LL, same thing that's in there. That's the system's root location. This is the RHEL 6 system. And this here is our RHEL 7 system. All right. So now let's actually cd, let's go to this location here, which is our temp directory, TMP, temp directory. So to get to that location, you'll do cd space slash TMP, slash TMP, and then you hit enter. So once you hit enter, now it has placed you inside of the temp directory, and you can see it right here. It has placed you inside of the temp directory, TMP, temp directory. And if you're not certain where you are on the system, all you do is execute the command pwd. And if you hit pwd and you hit enter, and it tells you where you are on the system. pwd stands for present working directory. So wherever you are on the system and you're not sure where you are, if you type pwd, it will tell you where exactly you are on the system. That's pwd. So right now we are inside of our temp directory. All right, any questions? Okay, and if I'm moving too fast, please let me know. Okay. So right now, we're in our temp directory. So can someone tell me, I want to know what's inside of my temp directory. What command would I use?
You'll use the ll command.
LL, okay.
Let's.
Okay, yep, you can use LL, or you can use LS, right? All right, so let's clear this screen here. We've got a lot of stuff on the screen. So let's do LL. So we have some stuff in here that we're not too worried about. That's just default stuff that is added to this location, but we don't need to worry about anything that's here. So now I'm going to show you how to create a directory and how to create a file. So remember, files and directories are different, or files and folders, but in Linux you call it directory, or you can call it folder if you want, but Linux terms you call it a directory or a file. A directory, you can place a file into a directory, right? But files, like a Word document, you can't place anything into a Word document. You can open it and type stuff into it and save it. But a folder, you can place a Word document inside of a folder. So I'm going to show you how to create a directory and how to create a file. So to create a directory, it's mkdir. Mkdir, make dir. Mkdir is to create a directory. So mkdir space followed by the name of that directory you're trying to create. So let's call the name of this directory, let's call it cars, right? Mkdir space cars. And then when I hit enter, now it's created it. So how do I know if it's been created?
You ask
How
the
do I
computer to list it with the ls or ll command.
Yep. So if you do an LL, now you see right there on the top, I just created a directory called cars. That is a directory because I use mkdir. But now let's create a file. So to create a file, I use touch. Touch creates a file. So touch followed by the name of the file. So let's call this file data, right? Touch space data. And I hit enter. And let's see, if I do an LL, now you see at the top there, I have the directory cars and I have the directory data. Any questions?
I have a question.
Okay.
So we created the directory cars, and then the data is a file, right?
Yep.
And is data inside of cars, or is that basically the next thing we're doing?
Okay, so data is not inside of cars. We're currently in our temp directory, right? We're currently inside of the directory called temp, right? So if we do a pwd, it tells me that I'm inside of the /tmp directory.
I see.
And what is inside of the /tmp directory? Let's list it out. So what's inside of the /tmp directory is we have a directory called cars, and we have a file called data, and we have a bunch of other stuff that we're not too worried about.
I see.
All right. So now let's create another directory. So how do I create a directory called shoe, like a shoe? How do I create Ernest?
Yeah, quick question. So anytime that you need to create, so there's two different, creating a directory and creating the file, right?
Yeah.
And anytime that you need to create a directory, it's mkdir.
Yes.
You press, you say whatever cars or TV, and then you press enter. And then for file, it's always touch space, whatever key, and then
Yep.
you press enter.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah. So to create a directory, mkdir space followed by the directory name, and to create a file, any file you want to create is touch, touch space the name of the file. All right. So I think Leyland, did you want to answer how you will create a directory called shoe?
So it will be mkdir space and then shoe.
Yep, just like that. All right. And how will I create a file called like house? File called house.
It would be touch space and then house.
Yep, just like that. And now I want to list out what I just created inside of the temp directory. Let me actually clear this out. So if I do an LL, now you see I have cars, data, house, and shoe right there. This is actually in alphabetical order. So cars, data, house, and shoe, right?
All right. When I see that you clear the page, and it continues from where you left off, I'm a little bit confused as how that, because I'm thinking I just don't know how it's not clearing everything.
Oh, what do you mean by clearing everything?
So when you basically
Like,
say let's clear and you start from the top, or it's continuing from where you left off at the from the previous line, and you just starting from the top going down again. And so do you do just like you told us earlier, you do control, or you just write clear?
yeah, you can either type CLEAR to just basically clear your screen. Let's say you just have a whole bunch of, let's say you got a whole bunch of stuff on your screen, oops, yeah, you got a whole bunch of stuff on your screen, right? And you're just tired of just always looking at the bottom. You just want to start from the top. You can either do type CLEAR, which will clear it, and you just start from the top. It
Okay.
clears your screen and just gives you a fresh screen.
And you're not able to go back to the previous.
You're not able to go back to the previous, but it actually saves all of the commands that you've executed.
Okay.
Yeah, so if you actually hit the up arrow key, you see I just typed clear, clear is still there. If I hit the up arrow key again, ls is there. So I keep hitting it, it tells me all the commands that I've used.
Okay.
Yeah, so all of the commands that are still there. But if you want to
Okay.
also see, all of the commands are actually saved in your history, right? So if you type history, just like that, and you hit enter, so these are all of the commands that I've typed since I turned my system on, or since I actually built my system.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So now I'm just going to do Control L to actually clear the screen, or you can just do CLEAR to clear.
Okay. All right.
Any more questions? Okay. All right, so now let's do LL again. All right. So how do I go inside of cars? Cars is actually a directory, right? So that means it's a folder, just like temp. The temp directory that we're currently in is a folder. So I created a folder, cars, inside of temp. So does somebody know how I can get inside of cars? Cars is actually a directory. And to determine the difference between a directory and a file, if you see cars, you look all the way to the left, you see that letter D? D for directory. So cars. Cars is a directory. Data is a file. Go to the left, doesn't have anything there. It's just blank. This has a dash. The next one has a dash. That's house. That's a file. Shoe, we created as a directory. Go all the way to the left. That's a directory. D for directory. So if you want, well, lucky for us, it's in purple and the file is in white. Sometimes it'll just be all white, and you won't be able to tell. But to tell the difference, you look all the way on the left, and you'll see the difference. You have D for directory, and the ones that are blank are files, and the top one is a D. I'll explain all of the rest of the stuff here later, but these are directories and files. So can someone tell me how I can get into this directory called cars?
Do you do command CD slash cars?
Okay, you were close. But if I did CD slash cars and just say CD, you don't have to say command, just CD. But if I did CD space slash cars, right, and I hit enter, it's going to tell me no such directory or file. And it's telling me that because the slash that we put in front, that you decided to put in front of cars, you're telling me that cars is part of your basic file system tree.
Oh.
You remember? So anything that is CD slash, when you begin with slash, is in your file system tree. So temp, TMP, that was in your file system tree. So anything that begins with slash, when you first start the location where you're trying to get to, and you do CD and you begin with slash, that means you're starting from your file system tree. So if I do CD slash and I hit enter and I do an LL, that means I need to get to one of these first, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the directory that we were currently in was temp, right? And I do an LL.
Mm-hmm.
So you take another guess
Not
how
everything
we
in
will
temp.
get there.
It is CDD.
Say it again.
CDD directory.
Yes. So it will just be CD cars. So there will be no slash in the front because the slash in the beginning indicates that I'm trying to get to what is in my file system tree from the beginning. So we just want to just CD cars because we're already inside of temp. You understand?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So now once I hit enter, just a second. Once I hit enter, now it's placed me inside of the cars directory. And now let's see what's inside of cars. That was a new directory created, so there shouldn't be anything in here. So it's nothing. So total 0. There's nothing in here. So I'm currently in the cars directory. So where am I currently at in the system? Can someone tell me what command I'll execute to tell me where I'm currently my current location on the system?
PWD.
PWD.
Yep. So PWD. PWD is telling me I'm in temp cars. You understand that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm in temp cars. So I'm currently in the cars directory. Right? Okay. So that's how you go from one location to another. So right now I'm inside of cars. So let's say I wanted to create so many like 5 different model cars, right? So I'm going to create them as files, right? So I'll do touch let's do like Lexus, and I'll hit enter, and I do LL. Now I just created a file called Lexus inside of cars. So now let's say I wanted to create Honda, but I also wanted to create another car without having to hit enter and create another file. So I can just, so Honda, Toyota, right? So touch Honda and Toyota. So I want to create two files, Honda and Toyota. So if I hit enter, and I do LL, now I've created Honda and Toyota. So you can create up to as many cars as you want on the fly. So you can do like touch, like Lambo, Mazda, Infinity, so many different types. You hit enter. I just created 3 cars. I do LL. So now I have those 3 different cars that I created, Lambo, Mazda, as well as Infinity, and those are files. Can you CD into a file?
No.
Yeah, you can't, because you can't CD into a file, but you can edit a file, right? But I'll show you how to do that in a second. So we've created, so we now know how to create directories, and we know how to create files, right? So now let's create a directory in here. mkdir, we're going to create it inside of cars, and let's call it let's call it data, right? mkdir data. We do an LL, and we see we created a directory called data. So let me clear my screen. So I'll do an LL, and we have data, and we have about 6 different files. All right. So how will I get into data?
You go CD data.
Yes. So CD data.
Space data.
Yep. I do LL, there's nothing in here. So where am I currently at on the system?
In data. And you can check by going PWD.
PWD. Yep. So now I'm in temp cars data. Does everyone understand that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So I'm currently inside of data, but now I want to go back to cars. Can someone try and figure out how will I go to my cars directory?
CD car.
CD cars. Okay, so if I do an LL here, there's nothing inside of this directory. So if I do a CD cars, it's going to tell me no such file or directory.
So will it be make directory?
Okay, so you want to create a directory called cars. Well, we currently have a directory right here called cars. How do you think I can get there? How do you think I can get back to that directory?
Some kind of backwards command.
Say it again.
Some kind of moving backwards command, right? We want to exit. Would it be exit data?
Or would you
Or
do
close
root
data?
cars?
Okay. So how do I get to temp? How do I get back to the temp directory? The TMP.
CD temp.
Yeah. CD
Okay.
temp.
So
Slash temp.
CD. So say it again.
CD space slash temp, right?
Slash temp. Yep. Slash temp. Right. And I hit enter. Right. CD space slash temp. So what is inside of temp?
Cars. Cars is it?
Cars. So how? Okay. So now to get to cars, you had to do CD temp. Right. And now we can now CD into what? Cars now. Right.
I
So
see.
now we're back inside of cars. So if I do an LL, what was inside of cars before? We had data and those 6 files. So we were just inside of data. So let's go back into data. Let me clear my screen. PWD, this is where I'm currently at. I'm currently in temp cars data. So I asked the question, how do I get into cars?
CD space slash temp.
Mhm.
Enter.
Keep going. Without hitting enter, you can keep going. So
Oh, and then
CD
space
slash
cars.
temp. Yeah, so CD slash temp, and you hit enter, right? And then you can do CD cars, right? So now we're inside of cars. So PWD. So now let's go back into data. Just want to make sure you guys understand this. It's a little tricky, but it's just trying to understand where you are in the system and how to move around. That's the concept I'm trying to have you understand. So if I do CD data, right? I do an LL, there's nothing here. So I want to get to cars, right? So I do CD temp slash cars. I put a slash here. Even though I put a slash here, it's not indicating that I'm going to my file system tree. It's telling me, okay, what is after temp? I want to go CD temp, and I want to then hop right into a directory that's inside of temp, which is cars. So CD temp cars, and I hit enter. So now I'm inside of cars. So if I do a PWD, it's telling me I'm inside of temp cars. Did I confuse anyone?
Nope.
Sorry, can you repeat the whole process again? I kind of got confused.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So
That's why you want to be doing it.
all right. So let's start off in our temp directory, right? Currently, we are in our temp directory. And the reason why we're able to use that slash in front of temp, because temp is in our basic file system tree. So if I do an LL, I want to get into cars, right? So what I'll do is I'll do CD cars, right? So if I do an LL, I want to get into the directory now called data. So I do a CD data. I hit enter. So now let me clear out my, and I'm actually going to leave it just right here. So if I do a PWD, it's telling me I'm in temp slash cars slash data. You understand? Currently, I'm in slash temp slash cars slash data. But let's say I just want to get to the cars directory. I want to take the absolute path to get to the cars directory. I want to go back to the cars directory, right? So I'll do cd/temp/cars. You see, currently we're inside of this directory called data. So all I want to do is just get back to this guy. So I'm going to cd into temp, and then cd into cars. So cd into temp/cars. cd into /temp/cars. So I'm going to cd into /temp/cars. So now,
quick question. So where it says root 9 localhost space data, that's where it tells you that you're in the data.
yes, yeah,
Okay, I
yeah.
got you.
So this beginning right here is just the user. The user that I'm currently am is root, and followed by the host name. And I'll explain what host name is later.
Okay.
And it actually does tell you where you are. So we were inside of data here. So I wanted to cd, I wanted to get back to my cars directory. So I did cd/temp/cars. Now it's putting me, now it put me back. Let me clear my screen. Now it put me back into my cars directory. So I do an LL. Now there is data, right? So now let me clear my screen, and now let me cd to just slash, which is my basic file system tree, correct? All right, so somebody give me the absolute path to get to data. You remember where data was? How would I get to data? Okay. All right. So to get to data, cd temp, and then enter, right? And I do an LL, and then cd cars, enter, and I do an LL to list out what is there, and I can do a cd data. And I do another LL, there's nothing in there, right? So now let me clear out my screen, and now let me do a cd slash, which puts me in my basic file system tree, my system's root location. And if I do an LL here, it tells me that, okay, I'm in I'm in my system roots location, right? PWD, I'm inside of the root location. So to get to data, we had to go to temp, and then we had to cd to cars, and then we had to cd to data, right? So the absolute path to get to data would be cd temp/cars/data, right? That's the absolute path that we're going to take. Instead of cd temp enter, and then cd cars enter, and then cd data enter, we're just going to take the absolute path, which is cd temp/cars/data, and then enter. So now if I do a present working directory, it tells me I'm in temp cars data. So we just took the absolute path to get to data. Instead of, let me go back to my file system tree, system's root location. I'll do a PWD. This is where I'm currently at on the system. Ernest, you got a question? You have a question, Ernest? You're talking on mute. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yes,
Okay.
I can.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah.
You have a question?
So my question is the reason why we go cd/temp/data/. It's basically like the short way and the long way to get there, right?
Yeah. So the short way is called the absolute path. So you take the absolute path to get to your location, which is cd/temp. So this is the relative path to get there is cd temp, enter, and then cd cars, and then cd data, right? So if I do a pwd, now I'm in temp cars data, right? But when I go back to my file system tree here, and I can do a cd temp cars data, takes me straight to that location. Does that make sense?
Yes. So if the short way is called absolute path, what is the long way called?
Relative path. Well, you don't have to actually use those terms. If you want to take the short way, do cd temp enter, cd cars enter, cd data. It's fine to do that, but long term, once you start to know where you are in the system, start trying to take the absolute path. But it's no problem if you want to take the short way, so that you can see what's inside of that directory, so that you can cd into it. There's no problem with that. It's just trying to understand where you are on the system. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Makes sense.
Okay. All right. So anything inside of this directory? Nope, nothing there. All right. So let's go back into our cars directory. So that will be cd temp cars. Right now we're in our cars directory. So in our cars directory, we have the directory data and a bunch of files there. So let's say you did not want the Lexus file there. Let's say you wanted to remove it. Let's say you didn't want it there. So to remove a file, you use the command rm. Rm is to remove. Rm space followed by the name of the file, Lexus. Rm Lexus. So if you hit enter, it's going to ask you, do you want to remove this regular empty file? It's going to ask you first if you use rm. So you just use the letter Y for yes. It's asking you, hey, do you actually want to remove it? So you hit yeah, Y for yes. You hit enter. So now you do an LL. Now the Lexus file is gone because we removed it. You use rm to remove a file. But let's
So
say we
you,
wanted to remove, say it again.
so if you want to remove a file, you type in rm space Lexus,
Yes.
and then you press enter, and it gives you a question mark, and then you press Y for yes.
Yes.
Gotcha.
All right. So you use rm to remove a file. So let's see what happens if we try to use rm to remove a directory. So that directory there is called data. So let's say we use rm to remove data. Data is a directory, it's not a file. So let's try it. It says cannot remove data. It is a directory. So you can't use rm to remove a directory. You can use RM to remove a file, but you can't use RM to remove a directory. You have to use something more stronger to remove a directory. So to remove a directory, you use RM space, and then you add flags to your command RM. So these flags, to add a flag, you do dash, and the flags that we're going to add to this command, which I'm going to explain, are RF. So RM-RF will be used to remove a directory. I'm going to explain these. So RM-RF, RM space dash RF space data. So I'm basically adding flags to that RM command to forcefully remove the data file directory. So once I hit enter, now it's removed that. So I can actually, let me do LL, I can actually use RM-RF to remove files as well, because I'm forcefully removing something. So I can use RM-RF to remove Honda. Honda is a file. So once I hit enter, it's not going to ask me, hey, do you want to remove it? If I only use RM, it would ask me. But since I use RF, which is basically just saying, hey, I'm going to destroy this file. Like, I'm using these flags that I'm using. F basically stands for force. So I want to forcefully remove it. The R, the dash R, stands for recursive. So every command that you type has a flag that you can attach to your command to do many different things. And we'll get into that in much more detail. In Linux, you have something called, okay, you have a question?
Yeah, is there a way to remove the files? I guess like all the files, or you have to do it one by one?
Yes, there is a way to do that.
Okay.
So let's say, what files do we have left right now? We have Infinity, Lambo, Mazda, and Toyota, right? You can do RM-RF. You can type Infinity space Lambo, Mazda, and Toyota. So you can put it all on the fly. So RM-RF, and you can put each and every item that you want to delete. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of that, right? So now if I do an LL, now there's nothing in here.
Okay, got you now.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and create some files really quickly. So data, so I'm going to do a touch, data 1, data 2, data 3, data 4. So what I'm doing is I'm creating 4 files on the fly using touch. So once I hit enter, I do an LL, now I've created data 1, data 2, data 3, and data 4. And when I did that, RM dash, hey, Adatola, I think you might have your phone and your computer. I think you might have called into both. So try and hang up on one of them. You might have your phone and your
Ano?
and say it again. That was for Adatola.
Yeah, I'm here. I was gonna ask, is there a way to recover the deleted files after they've
No,
been
there is not.
deleted?
No.
Okay. Okay.
So once you get into the field, you have you'll either be trained to take backups of your systems, or you have a backup team. So some companies take backups every night or even every week. So if you remove something by accident, you'll have to contact your backup and recovery team to recover that file or that folder that was deleted. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. So once it's removed, you can't just go to the trash bin and take it out like Windows. You just go to the trash bin and take it out and you place it back. So once you do RM-RF, it's gone. And if you don't have backups, then you're in trouble. So you have to make sure that you are paying attention to what you're removing. You have to pay really attention and be really precise on what is being removed. All right.
Okay. All right.
All right. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to create a directory. I'm going to create a directory called I'll create that directory again called cars. So if I do an LL, I have cars. All right. So copying and moving files. So when you copy a file from one place to another, when you copy a file from point A to point B, the file is still going to be in point A, but it's now also going to exist in point B. But when you move it from point A to point B, it's no longer going to exist in point A. It's only going to exist in point B. And that's just how, even in Windows, when you copy something and you paste it somewhere, now you have two of those files. But if you just move it, you're just moving it completely from one place to another. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So we have a directory or a folder now called cars, and we have files data 1, data 2, data 3, and data 4. So I'm going to copy data 1 into the directory called cars. So to copy a file, CP. CP stands for copy. So CP space what you want to copy. So I want to copy data 1. And where do you want to copy data 1 to? I want to copy data 1 to cars. So I want to copy data 1, and I want to copy it inside of cars. So if I hit enter and I do an LL, nothing here has changed. Data 1 is still there. But what did I just do? I just copied data 1 inside of cars. So how will I check to see if I actually copied data 1 into cars?
PWD.
Okay, PWD tells you where you are on the system.
No, CD
No,
cars. CD space cars. Enter.
So CD, cars, enter.
LL.
You do an LL. So now we have data 1 inside of cars. So what I just did was I copied data 1 inside of cars. So we now have data 1 inside of one location, and I copied it inside of cars, right? I think I even have 2 directories called cars now. So right now I'm currently inside of cars, right? If I do a PWD, I actually have two directories called cars. Don't want to confuse you, but see temp, cars, cars, right? All right. So now how do I get back to the other cars?
CD.
CD space
CD. Mhm.
slash TMP slash cars. Enter.
Yep.
LL.
Okay. Okay. So now we're back to where we were before. So cars, data 1, data 2, data 3, and data 4. So now we copied data 1 into cars, and we had data 1 in both locations. So now I'm going to move data 2 into cars. So I'm going to move it. So to move a file is MV. MV is to move a file. So move, what do you want to move? I want to move data 2, and where do I want to move it to? I want to move it to cars. So if I hit enter and I do an LL, so data 2 is no longer here. I moved it. I didn't copy it, I moved it. So now to check to see if it actually moved to properly to that location, I do a CD cars. I hit enter. I do an LL. Now we have data 1 and data 2 in here. So data 2 moved into cars. So now that is copying and moving files, right? So now I'm going to do something that's going to confuse you a little. So now I'm going to copy data 1 inside of my temp directory, the /temp directory, right? Data 1. Where am I currently? I'm currently in temp cars, right? So I'm going to copy data 1. I'm going to copy data 1 to this location here, temp. I'm going to copy this file to this location called temp. So I want to copy, and what do I want to copy? I want to copy data 1, and where do I want to copy it to? I want to copy it to temp. So temp is located where? /temp. That's where temp is located. So I want to copy data 1 to temp. Temp is located in /. So it's going to copy data 1 into temp. So if I do enter, if I do LL, data 1 is still there because I copied it. So now how will I check to see if it actually copied there?
CD
CD temp enter.
CD temp enter.
CD /temp.
/temp.
Enter. You do LL.
Hello.
Now we have data 1 right here. So we copy data 1 here. All right. So now I'm going to move data 2 that was inside of cars to this location. Okay. But I'm not even going to CD there. I'm going to do it directly from this location. All right. So I want to copy. And what do I want to copy? I want to copy /temp /cars / and if I hit the, let's say you forget what is inside of the directory you're in. If you hit the tab key twice, tab, it tells you what's inside of that directory before you get, before, so that you will know exactly what to type after that. So copy /temp/cars/cars again, and when I hit the tab key again twice, now it's telling me, okay, there's data inside of here. I have data 1 and I have data 2, right? So I want to copy data 2. So I took the absolute path. So I'm going to copy data 2. I'm not copying temp cars and cars. I'm only copying data 2. So I'm copying data 2. And where do I want to copy it to? I want to copy it to temp, right? So I want to copy it to temp, so space/temp. So understand, so I'm copying, and I went all the way inside of these directories, temp, cars, and then data 2. So that's what I want to copy. And then my destination is to where? To temp. So when I hit enter and I do an LL, now I have data 2 in this inside of temp as well. Okay, so does anyone have any questions?
Can you do it one more time?
Okay. All right. So I'm currently inside of temp. I'm going to remove the contents that I just placed here, right? So data 1 and data 2, how will I remove data 1 and data 2?
You do RM dash RF space data 1, data 2.
Yeah, so RM space dash RF space data 1 space data 2. So I hit enter and I do an LL. So data 1 and data 2 are gone, right? So now I'm going to copy data 1 and data. I'm going to copy data 1 first from that location to this location where I'm currently at inside the temp directory. So copy. So now what do I want to copy? I want to copy data 1, but where is data 1? Data 1 is inside of temp, but since we're already inside of the temp directory, we don't even actually need to specify the temp directory because we're already in there. So we can go straight to cars, right? Do you understand that?
Yes.
So cars, and then if you hit the tab key twice, tab, it tells me, okay, what is inside of cars? All right, so I know that data 1 is inside of the other cars directory. So I hit cars, just like that. But when I hit data 1, when I hit the tab key twice, it actually populates the data that's already here, DATA. But when I hit it again, then it tells me I have 2 files in here. They both begin with DATA. That's why it populated it. But now you got to choose which one you want to copy. So I want to copy data 1, right? And where do I want to copy it to? I want to copy it to temp, but I'm actually in the temp directory, right? So I can specify temp, and it will work if I specify temp. I'm just going to hit enter, just like that. And if I do an LL, data 1 is here, right? Does that make more sense?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to now move data 2 from that car's location into temp. So I'm currently where? I'm currently inside of the temp directory, right? So I'm going to move. What do I want to move? I want to move data 2 from that location, right? So I'm currently inside of temp. I don't need to specify temp since I'm already inside of it. So move cars, and then cars again. And what is inside of cars? I know that data, if I just hit the letter D and A, and I hit the tab key, and if I hit it again, so now I want to move data 2. I want to move data 2, right? From that cars location. I want to move data 2. And where do I want to move it to? I want to move it to the current directory that I'm in. So since I'm currently inside of this directory, a trick that you can use, instead of having to specify /tmp, what you can do is just tell it, hey, I want you to put it right here by using the period. Period basically indicates, hey, drop it right here. Drop it in this location where I'm currently at. I'm inside of the temp directory. I want to copy data 2. Where do I want to copy it to? I can specify /temp. It will still copy it here. But since I'm already in this location, I can just hit the period button, which will just drop that file in this location. So I'm moving it into this location. So if I hit enter and I do an LL, so now I have data 2 inside of temp. So do you understand the concept of that period?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Does everyone understand the concept of moving files and copying files?
Yes.
Yes.
Does
For the
anyone?
most part.
Okay. All right. And removing files. All
That
right.
one I totally understand.
All right. So I'm going to end it right here. And what I'm going to do is I'll upload this session to the website and it'll be available tomorrow morning. I'll provide you all the link on how to get to it. Let me actually stop recording.